50. It's the age when Gen X finally starts to feel like the plan is working. The debt is under control, the savings are growing, the retirement account has a number in it that actually means something. For the first time in decades, the financial decisions feel solid. But here's what almost nobody talks about. There are 5 mistakes that will quietly cost you $100,000 or more by the time you reach 65. Because the decisions that built wealth in your 30s work differently in your 50s, and nobody told you the rules had changed. Which decisions? Why do they feel right when they're actually wrong? And how much damage have they already done before most people even realize what happened? The answers are more uncomfortable than most people expect. Like, subscribe, and let's start. Mistake 1. Going conservative too early. Here's what the conventional wisdom says. As you get closer to retirement, move your investments into safer assets. Less stock market exposure, more bonds, more cash. Protect what you've built. It sounds like the responsible thing to do. It sounds like exactly what a financially mature adult is supposed to do at 52. It's also one of the most expensive decisions Gen X is making right now. Here's the problem with the logic. At 52, retirement is roughly 13 years away. But retirement is not the finish line for your money. It's the starting line for a completely different phase that could last 20 to 25 years. The average life expectancy in most developed countries now sits between 83 and 86. That means the money you're protecting at 52 needs to last until you're 85 or older. A portfolio that moves heavily into bonds and cash at 52 will grow at approximately 2 to 3% annually in the current environment. Inflation runs at 2 to 3% on average. The real return, the actual purchasing power gained, is close to zero. Meanwhile, a diversified equity portfolio has historically returned 7 to 10% annually over long periods. The difference over 13 years on a $300,000 portfolio is significant. At 3% annual return, that $300,000 becomes approximately $440,000 by 65. At 7%, it becomes approximately $737,000. That's a gap of nearly $300,000, created not by a market crash, not by bad luck, but by a decision that felt like caution. Going conservative too early doesn't protect your retirement. It quietly underfunds it. And the worst part is that it feels like exactly the right thing to do, which is what makes it the most common mistake on this list. But the second mistake is subtler. And for most Gen X households, it's already happening right now without anyone realizing it. Mistake 2. Funding your children's future at the expense of your own. This one is uncomfortable to say out loud. Gen X is the generation that watched their parents struggle. They vowed to do better for their own kids, and they have, by almost every measure. Gen X parents have provided more financial support to their children than any previous generation. University costs covered, first home deposits contributed, car purchases helped, emergency funds backstopped. It comes from a good place. It is doing real damage. Data consistently shows that Gen X withdraws from retirement accounts, pauses contributions, or redirects savings toward their children's financial needs at exactly the stage of life when compound growth is doing its most powerful work. Between 50 and 60, the money already in a retirement account is compounding on a larger base than ever before. Every dollar removed or redirected at this stage doesn't just cost $1, it costs every dollar that dollar would have generated over the next 15 to 20 years. A $20,000 withdrawal at 52 to help with a university deposit doesn't cost $20,000 in retirement. At 7% annual return over 13 years, it costs approximately $50,000. And here's the part that makes this genuinely difficult.
Your child can borrow for university. They can save for a deposit over time. They have decades of earning ahead of them to recover from a slower start. You cannot borrow for retirement. You cannot recover lost compounding time. The years between 50 and 60 are the most valuable compounding years of your entire financial life, and they cannot be replaced. Helping your children is not wrong. Helping them at the direct expense of your own retirement security is a mistake that will follow you for 20 years. The third mistake is one that almost nobody talks about. because it requires admitting something that feels too complicated to deal with right now. Mistake 3. Ignoring tax diversification. Most Gen X investors have spent 30 years putting money into one type of account: traditional 401k, employer pension, standard retirement fund. Pre-tax contributions, tax-deferred growth, taxed as ordinary income when withdrawn.
It felt like the right call. The tax break up front was real. The growth was real. The discipline was real. But here's what that decision looks like at 65. Every dollar withdrawn from a traditional pre-tax retirement account is taxed as ordinary income in the year it's taken. If you've accumulated $600,000 in a traditional account and need $60,000 a year to live on, that $60,000 is added to any other income you have and taxed at your marginal rate. Depending on your situation, that could mean losing 22 to 32 cents of every dollar you withdraw to tax. Tax diversification means holding money in multiple types of accounts: pre-tax accounts that are taxed on withdrawal, post-tax accounts like Roth IRAs, where withdrawals are tax-free, and standard taxable brokerage accounts. The combination gives flexibility to manage your tax bill in retirement by choosing which account to draw from each year based on your income situation. The difference between a well-tax diversified retirement income strategy and a single account withdrawal strategy can easily reach $40,000 to $80,000 over a 20-year retirement. That's not a theoretical number. That's real money that stays in your pocket instead of going to tax, if the accounts are set up correctly before 65. After 65, the options narrow significantly. The window to make this change is open right now, and for most Gen X investors, it's closing faster than they realize. The fourth mistake is one that feels like discipline. It's actually fear in disguise. Mistake 4. Treating the family home as a retirement plan. For most Gen X households, the family home is the largest single asset on the balance sheet. It's also the most illiquid, the most expensive to maintain, and the least flexible source of retirement income available. Here's how this mistake plays out. A Gen X homeowner at 55 has $180,000 in retirement savings and $400,000 in home equity. On paper, net worth looks solid, but retirement income comes from liquid assets, from accounts that generate cash flow or can be drawn down gradually. Home equity does neither until the house is sold or a product like a reverse mortgage is used. The mistake isn't owning the home. The mistake is counting the home equity as a retirement plan while under-contributing to actual retirement accounts because the net worth number looks fine. At 55, a household with $180,000 in retirement savings is significantly behind where they need to be. The home equity doesn't change that. It can't be spent as income. It can't be drawn down $2,000 a month to cover living expenses. And selling the family home in retirement, downsizing, relocating, disrupting the life that was built there, carries emotional and practical costs that most people underestimate entirely when they're 55 and the plan still feels theoretical. Home equity is real wealth, but it is not a retirement account, and treating it like one leads to the same outcome every time: arriving at 65 with a paid-off house, insufficient liquid savings, and a set of options that are all more difficult than they needed to be. The fifth mistake is the one most people dismiss when they hear it, because it sounds like something that only affects other people. It doesn't. Mistake 5. Not having a plan for the healthcare gap. Here's a number that almost never appears in retirement planning conversations. If you retire at 62 instead of 65, you face up to 3 years without access to government-funded healthcare coverage, Medicare in the US, NHS coverage gaps in the UK, or equivalent public healthcare transitions in other developed countries. Private health insurance for a 62-year-old runs approximately $800 to $1,500 per month, depending on the market and coverage level. Over 3 years, that's $28,800 to $54,000 in healthcare costs that almost nobody builds into their retirement projections. But the healthcare gap isn't just about early retirement. Even retiring at 65 with full government coverage, the out-of-pocket costs that public healthcare doesn't cover — dental, vision, specialist care, prescription costs, and the increasing likelihood of some form of long-term care add up to $5,000 to $12,000 per year in most realistic scenarios. Over a 20-year retirement, that's $100,000 to $240,000 in healthcare costs sitting outside the retirement plan entirely. The mistake isn't getting sick. The mistake is building a retirement plan around a savings number without ever calculating what healthcare will actually cost, and then discovering the gap at exactly the moment when there's no time left to fill it. Gen X, more than any other generation, understands that systems don't always hold. They watched employer healthcare disappear. They watched pension promises evaporate. They built backup plans for everything. Except this. 5 mistakes. All of them feel responsible when they're made. All of them cost real money by 65. And all of them are still fixable, but only while there's still time to fix them. The window doesn't stay open indefinitely. Gen X learned that lesson in 2008 when the market made decisions for them. They learned it when companies made redundancies for people who thought they had decades left. They learned it every time a system they trusted changed the rules without warning. The difference now is that the rules haven't changed without warning. The warning is right here. Going conservative too early. Funding children at the expense of compounding. Ignoring tax diversification. Counting home equity as a retirement plan. Leaving the healthcare gap unfunded. 5 decisions. Each one feels like the right call when you make it. Each one shows up in the retirement number at 65 in ways that are measurable, real, and, if caught early enough, completely avoidable. The plan that got you to 50 was the right plan for getting to 50. The next 15 years need a different one. Give me your thoughts in the comments and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.